Hey guys, this is George and I'm back with a new video, and in this video we're talking the conclusion of DCeased. That's DCeased number 6, and I got the cool variant cover with Darkseid on it. It's pretty awesome. So before we get into the video, I do want to let you know there are spoilers. There are going to be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't read this issue, you haven't been to your local comic shop, you might want to pick it up before watching this video. This issue is definitely a doozy. A lot happens in this issue, and it's definitely a fitting end to this kind of off-kilter zombie story that I really like, that centers around the characters of the DC universe. So if you're still here, we're going to start with a little bit of an overview of the story, and we're going to kind of do a play-by-play, and then afterwards we can discuss some of the things I liked, disliked, kind of more thoughts on the story. The issue opens directly after the conclusion of the previous issue, and in the previous issue we found out that Superman was infected by the Flash in the previous issue. So the Flash had become infected with that anti-life equation, and Superman did successfully stop him, but in turn the Flash infected him by managing to stab Superman in the stomach with his fingers. And so that's how Superman became infected in the previous issue, and we start this issue in the aftermath of that. So before succumbing to the infection, Superman had tried to escape into a space, and I think he tried to throw himself into the sun hoping it would destroy him. He didn't make it that far. He transforms into zombie Superman, and that's where this story begins. It opens with people looking up in hope at Superman as he descends from space, and that hope quickly changes into terror as they realize this isn't the Superman that they know and love. It's zombie Superman, and he quickly goes to work destroying everything. What's really interesting about these zombies, or these infected, they don't seem to have the mental facilities of their original selves, but they do seem to have access to it. They do still have access to all of their abilities. And so I can just imagine anybody who was safe before, who was successfully able to hide away because they hid themselves far enough away or deep enough within a building, that goes out the window because Superman has X-ray vision. And so depending on how well he can see, and I think he can see pretty well with this vision, there's pretty much no safe place on the planet. Hence Superman being the worst case scenario of somebody you don't want to get infected. And Superman gets to work wiping out any remaining life that's in his path. And so then we cut to the Fortress of Solitude, where the surviving members of the Justice League, and at this point it's Damian Batman, Jonathan Kent or Superboy, Cyborg, Wonder Woman, Black Canary, Green Lantern or Canary Lantern, Green Arrow, and basically anybody who's left, like Lois Lane, Alfred, a few others. And there's kind of a moment of levity where they joke a little bit, and Damian talks about his father having contingency plans for superheroes going rogue, obviously. And Green Arrow's a little salty about this. Actually, he's a lot salty about this, because he goes off on a tangent about how, of course, it's going to be Batman who's actively plotting against his allies and has these in case of contingencies to bring his allies down. And I love that about Green Arrow because it really captures his cynicism. And to top it off, in an even funnier moment, Damian, in all seriousness, mentions that, well, he actually didn't make a contingency plan for you. And this makes Green Arrow the saltiest thing on the planet. And now Green Arrow, who's actually a little bit hurt, he actually says, Bruce didn't think I could be dangerous? And Green Canary's actually loving this, and she's poking fun at Ollie, telling him, pobrecito, or she actually says, you're hurt, Batman didn't have a post-mortem Machiavellian plan to end you? And it's just a really funny moment. And Green Arrow responds, I could be a planetary threat if I wanted to. Whether he actually believes it or not, it's just a funny character moment for Green Arrow. So it's just a really funny moment in this very dark issue, because things are about to get a lot worse for everyone. So at this point, Alfred and Damian, they're discussing this with the others, and Wonder Woman points out that Batman's not the only one who made contingency plans. And she also made a contingency, and we see what that contingency is. She goes to work forging the Sword of Athena, but merging it with kryptonite so that the magical properties and the kryptonite properties would be effective in stopping Superman, because a normal Superman in this universe, his weakness is of course kryptonite and magic. He's weak against those things. Wonder Woman knows this, so she goes to work to create this sword that will stop Superman. And so at this point they know they've run out of time, so Wonder Woman orders the others to evacuate everyone to the Arks, while she, Green Lantern, Black Canary, and Cyborg, they fly off to face Superman, while the others deal with loading up the Arks and buying everyone time to get into the Arks and off into space. And at this point in the story, we do learn that Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, they're going to stay on Earth. They're not evacuating. And it's implied that a lot of other people are staying, whether they chose to or they just get left behind. There's just not enough time, especially now that Superman's become infected. There's just not enough time to evacuate everyone. So they're taking as many as they can and they're fleeing into space. And then now we cut to Themyscira, and this part is awesome. I've always loved the Amazons. I love Wonder Woman. I've always liked how strong they are, how tough they are, how brave they are, and we get to see that in this issue, because this is the last stand of the Amazons. The last arc is on Themyscira, and the Amazons are going to have to hold the line to allow the refugees enough time to board the Arks and escape into space. And I just think of that moment from 300 where King Leonidas kicks the messenger into that pit. I just think of the Amazons kicking the crap out of all these infected, and they're like, "This is Themyscira!" Because Aquaman shows up, and not only does he have a legion of infected with him, but he brought with him the Kraken. And I'm not talking about like just any Kraken. This is the terrifying sea monster that we've all had nightmares of since we were kids. The same one that we saw nearly eat Jason Momoa in Aquaman. And it's breathtaking. This is actually 2 pages to behold the Kraken, and the Amazons don't care. And they're racing to the water, and they're ready to throw down with whatever infected Aquaman's brought with him. And it's just a legendary comic book moment. It is so good. That's what I love about these last stand, end of the world comics. You get to see the heroes in these moments where all hope is lost, but they're heroes, so it doesn't matter win or lose. They're gonna hold the line, and that's what the Amazons do here, so the Arks can escape. There's one slight moment of levity here. Green Arrow is still salty about Batman not considering him an Omega level threat or anything like that. And what Green Arrow does is he actually takes out Aquaman, and he notes that it's one of the most difficult shots that anybody in history could make. Probably not even Batman could make that shot. And Green Arrow made it with ease, and he's just kind of griping about Batman thinking so low of Green Arrow that he didn't think it was worth giving him a contingency plan. That's the one really funny moment as things go down the drain, and the Amazons, they hold the line. And Tom Taylor gives us a really cool line about that. He says, "Paradise held off oblivion," and I thought that was pretty cool. So between the battle with the Amazons on Themyscira and the infected, we're actually cutting between Wonder Woman, Black Canary, Green Lantern, and Cyborg. We're intercutting between those two, and they're engaging Superman. Black Canary says she doesn't have to hold back because there's literally no more life left. Superman's wiped out all life within that vicinity, and Black Canary unleashes all of her power and amplifies it with the power of the Green Lantern ring. And it actually does a pretty good job of causing Superman some damage and some pain, but it's not enough, and Superman starts to inch forward towards her. And then that's when Wonder Woman steps in, and she hacks off his arm, and she plunges the sword through his chest, but it's not enough to stop him, and Superman mortally wounds Wonder Woman by stabbing her through the stomach, which in turn infects Wonder Woman. And so Superman is actually weakened, and here we start to see more that these infected have the ability to think, and they do actually think. As Superman retreats into space, and Wonder Woman gives Black Canary the sword and Cyborg and tells them to go after Superman and stop him. And Cyborg decides to stay there with Wonder Woman to be with her before she turns, and I guess possibly he's thinking he could maybe try and stop her or kill her. And Black Canary, Green Lantern, she flies off into space with the kryptonite sword of Athena. We cut to space now, and we're on the Arks, and it focuses on John. John's watching the Earth, and he knows that Wonder Woman's failed because he has a moment with Damian, and You know, they hug each other because this, for all they know, this is gonna be the last time they see each other. And Superboy asks Damian to watch over his mother for him in case he doesn't make it back. And Superboy is the last line of defense that they have here. He's the only one who has the potential to hold off Superman from destroying the arcs, and that's exactly what he's trying to do, is to destroy the arcs. And Superman's flying like a missile directly at the arcs, and Superboy flies into space to meet him head on, and they collide in space, and this knocks Superboy unconscious. And Superman himself is kind of injured from this, but he comes to before Superboy. And he's about to finish off the arcs. And then Canary Lantern arrives. She finally catches up to Superman. And with Superboy knocked out, she is now the last line of defense against Superman. But all of a sudden, the Green Lantern Corps arrives. And Guy Gardner, in a moment of levity, he's kind of joking around about not having the indomitable willpower of Hal Jordan or the creativity of Kyle Rayner, but still having the ability to be able to laugh in Fear's face. It's a cool moment for Guy Gardner. And what's interesting here is that we get to see that Superman actually pauses. So for up until this point, for the previous issues, it seemed as though these infected, that they weren't really capable of thinking, that they kind of just acted, that all they could do was just spread the virus, and that's their only function. But Superman actually pauses, and Dina or Ganthet mentions that he's calculating, and they mention that he's calculating his odds. Can he actually take out all of the Green Lantern Corps? And I thought that was really interesting, because instead of charging head on, what you would think an infected, uncontrollable beast would do, no, he actually retreats. But he doesn't retreat into space, he actually retreats into the sun. And we get to see something really cool that may be some sort of latent ability or something that Superman could actually do, but he never would do, because it would result in our sun wiping out all life. Because what he does is he flies into the sun and he starts to absorb all of the energy of the sun into his body. Well, this essentially kills the sun, which will in turn wipe out all life on Earth. And so it's really interesting, because we learned that the Green Lantern Corps, they didn't really arrive to help. They arrived to quarantine the Earth off from the rest of the universe. And so that kind of lets you know everybody who's still on Earth is, well, doomed. If you didn't already think they were doomed, well, now you know they're doomed, because I don't think there is any hope for survival on Earth without the sun. But we do cut back to Earth for a moment, and we see that Wonder Woman has now turned, and Cyborg actually has used the lasso of truth on Wonder Woman, and in doing so, he asks her if there's a cure. And we find out that they are able to collectively use a voice. She says, "We have a voice," and she answers his question, and she says, "Yes, there is a cure, and it starts and ends with you, Cyborg. You're the beginning. The virus started with you, and it could end with you." I've kind of sensed from the beginning that, you know, something's off with Cyborg, just because ever since, you know, he was tortured and then he became the vessel for this virus, he kind of seems a little bit off to me. And we really see that here in this final issue, because instead of ending Wonder Woman while he has her contained, he drops his guard and he becomes excited, so excited about the fact that there is a cure, or potentially is a cure for this virus. But instead of killing Wonder Woman and moving forward, he actually turns his back to Wonder Woman, talking about, "I have to get to space, I have to tell them," and Wonder Woman promptly rips his head off. And so that's the last thing we see on Earth. And with Superman sucking up all the energy, it stands to reason that anybody who stayed on Earth is doomed. And so the final page of the story, this 6-issue story, finally comes to an end. We see Lois Lane's journal entries, and we see her teared up as her, Superboy, Damian, Alfred, Hawkgirl, Green Arrow, Green Canary, Firestorm, Black Lightning. The few survivors who escaped into space are now looking upon their new planet, or Earth 2 as they call it, from the arcs. And so that's where the story ends. It's actually kind of a hopeful ending, but of course you knew once Superman got infected that things were not going to end well at all. I think for them to have got off this well, for them to have even managed to have made it into space without even more casualties, was kind of a miracle. Because if you really think about all of the abilities that Superman has, the fact that he's on the level of somebody like the Flash, that he could travel around so quickly also, but also have so many more abilities that he can use to his advantage, like the X-ray vision that I think he was using to detect some of the people who might have been squirreled away or hidden. It would have made sense that there would have been even more casualties, or that the Earth itself would have just completely fallen to the infected. And so, if I didn't mention it earlier, this story is written by Tom Taylor with illustrations by Trevor Hairsine and Neil Edwards. Like the previous issues, I've really loved this story a lot. I think it's a fantastic story by Tom Taylor. The artwork's been fantastic. I've loved the variant covers. They've all looked great. If you're in the mood for a zombie infected Halloween story, I know we're past Halloween now, but this has been a really fun story and something that I kind of didn't expect from DC, because I kind of expected them to kind of pull their punches a little bit and not be as graphic as they were in this story. But they don't do that here. They don't pull any punches. You see a lot of your favorite characters die in very terrible ways, and it's a very gruesome story. And if you're a fan of gory horror stories, this is going to be right up your alley. And it's not just a fun read, it's a very good story. There's a lot of great moments in this story. There's a lot of tragic moments. There's actually a lot of moments of levity. What I'm trying to say is it's an overall very fun experience, and there's something for everyone in this story. My only kind of gripe with this story is that I don't think Wonder Woman would have went in with just 3. I know she's very confident, but she's also very intelligent. And throughout this story, we see that she's been very strategic. And so I think she would have taken more heroes with her. But even if she didn't take more heroes, I think she would have went for a headshot right away. I think after hacking off his arm, she would have went straight for his head instead of abdominal or chest. I think she would have went straight for his head and been done with it. I don't think she would have given Superman the chance to infect her. Except in this story, that's what happens, and she does become infected. So I think that's my only kind of gripe with the story. It's a very minor gripe. It's not really anything. But overall, like I mentioned, DCeased has been such a fun, phenomenal story. And if you're a DC fan, if you're a horror fan, if you just like good comic book stories, this is definitely one you're going to want to pick up. As for where I see this going, I think potentially they could come back and revisit the DCeased story. It might be interesting to see what happens, like maybe DCeased before the lights go out could be like a cool story, because there's going to be, I think, maybe a few days before everything goes dark once Superman absorbs all of the energy of the sun. So I think that could be a really cool story for them to return. But with them not fully dealing with everybody, I mean, Wonder Woman's still out there. Superman, I can only imagine how powerful he's going to become if it doesn't kill him to absorb all that energy. He could potentially still be a viable threat. And I can definitely see a DCeased Part 2 or more stories in this universe. So I'm hoping that Tom Taylor has that in store for us, that there's more to this universe, because I'd like to read more. I can only imagine how cool it would be if we got a DC animated feature film of DCeased. I think that would be pretty awesome. I think a lot of fans would love that. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but at the same time, they did make Batman a Killing Joke, and that one was very controversial. This one, if it were made directly for HBO Max and just strictly made for mature audiences, yeah, I can see this one doing really well. Maybe even getting a animated feature film release. There's a lot of interesting things on the horizon for DC and comic movies in general, so I think the sky's the limit for this storyline, and I'd love them to do more with this story. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you loved the DC story. Let me know in the comments section what you thought of this issue and the storyline as a whole. And if you like more comic book content and videos, subscribe to my channel for more. Leave a like if you liked the video, share it if you loved it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.